Recorded in 1931 by Rustington man Charles Swain, speedboats and the regatta were a big attraction in Littlehampton. Baby Bullet and Miss Littlehampton were among the fast boats to take passengers out on offshore runs. The old Coast Guard cottages and Arran Mill in the background of some of the shots were demolished in 1932, soon after these pictures were taken, to make way for the new Butlins amusement park. The paddle steamer Brighton Belle was another vessel to call at ports along the south coast. She used to berth at Littlehampton for an hour or so to allow trippers to disembark and new passengers to board. In 1940, the Brighton Belle took part in the evacuation of British troops from Dunkirk. Sadly, she was one of 5 paddle steamers to be sunk in the operation. J.B. Priestley was later to refer to the part played by such vessels in a radio broadcast. Hard to imagine now, perhaps, but having been constructed during the late 1920s, Arran Parade, from which the steamer disembarked, was a new feature of the town. Meanwhile, at nearby Ford, Alan Cobham's Flying Circus was entertaining the crowds and giving pleasure flights. This alarmingly low flying was perhaps one of Cobham's pilots. Even without the added attraction of unscheduled aerobatics, the 1933 Littlehampton Regatta attracted a good number of participants and plenty of spectators. Around the same time, children had their own regatta, held on the town's oyster pond. Sailing model boats, it seems, was far from just a boy's hobby. The region's resorts continued to attract record numbers of visitors. 1954 Ramsgate had much to offer.
These are just some of the happy people who jumped at a Ramsgate holiday. The race is on, but it's only one of many held during the summer. Regattas are held frequently, and, as always, the yachts make a graceful picture as they speed through the bay, propelled by fresh sea breezes. This is an ideal setting for a sporting struggle with sail and tiller. A delightful course stretches from the harbour to Pegwell Bay, where, in the background, the Kent countryside comes down to meet the sea. From sails to outboards and hydroplane racing. This is one of the features of Ramsgate's Water Carnival, yet another event in an ever-growing list of summer attractions. From Ramsgate Airport, frequent trips are flown to the continent, and pleasure flights over Thanet are a regular feature. Breathtaking views of the Kentish coastline and countryside, aptly described as the Garden of England, form part of the aerial treat. Ramsgate Carnival is more than just a fancy dress parade. It's a feast of fun, the big turnout of the year with a procession miles long. This is one of the highlights of the summer season, and if you like the gaiety of merry crowds, you'll enjoy yourself at the carnival. Visitors are always encouraged to join in the fun. Here on this decorated float is the beauty queen, chosen every year from a host of beautiful girls. And close behind, another float presents the town's motif, the ram and gate, in the delightful company of the aqua lovelies.
Over the decades, there have been many cross-channel services linking the south coast with France and the Channel Isles. The British vessels crossing from southern ports, such as Dover, Southampton and Weymouth, were owned by the local railway companies. But on the 4th of April 1949, with nationalisation of the railway, they all hoisted the British Railways house flag. With the advent of fairly reliable cheap air travel during the late 1950s, passenger numbers on the steamers began to decline. The Southampton service ended in 1961, but the service from Weymouth continued, later receiving the new corporate Sea Link livery. Visitors and local people alike will remember such vessels as Normania, built in 1952, which is capable of nearly 20 knots and was converted to carry cars in 1964. Caesarea, which was built locally at Cowes, especially for the Weymouth Channel Isles service, and bore the Roman name for Jersey, and Sarnia, her sister ship, whose name meant Guernsey. Remembered with affection, none of these vessels is now any more than a memory. Some scenes, however, are still recognizable.
Destination Margate, Belle of Kent, situated on the flat, fertile land of the Isle of Thanet. A town where the old dwells side by side with the new, a town which in the 8th year of the reign of Queen Elizabeth I had no more than 108 inhabited houses and 8 inhabitants without a house of any kind. Today, many wonderful examples of varied kinds of architecture can be seen in the neighborhood of Hawley Green and Hawley Square. On the 20th of July 1874, the Theatre Royal opened its doors for the first time. The building you now see took the place of the original theatre, built in 1786 on a piece of land which cost £80. Apart from a holiday resort, Margate is quite an important port. The harbour is the centre for quite a fair amount of riverborne traffic. Those who come here place great store on the words of the poet Inglesby, who said, "You should go down to Margate to look at the ships, or take what the bathing room people call dips." During the last war, because of its proximity to the French coast, calls were made upon the crews almost equal to those of the men in the front line. Like all stations in the British Isles, a complete state of preparedness always exists. Training is carried out at frequent intervals, as in all other fields of humane activity, they never know when the next call may be. Palm Bay Cliftonville has a sun-decked restaurant built over the beach and sea. The popularity of this amenity can be gauged by the vast number of people who patronize it. Alternatively, visitors sit under gay parasols in the hot sunshine, giving point to the name Continental Cliftonville, which the resort is often called. The ever-popular Oval is another Cliftonville corner for relaxation. Whilst at the Lido, entertainment of diversified types is always on tap, catering for every possible taste. Here can be found the magnificent seawater tidal bathing pool, and though swimming is the order of the day in all pools, the wonderful surroundings, sun, sea and air make the Lido an attraction with a difference.
And so, with these scenes of Margate in 1958, we end our trip to the coast in the past.